Hello, folks. This is Ken Hackshaw, and welcome to another installment of Risk Unfiltered. It's my privilege to interview the CEO of TTT Limited. So, David, thank you very much for taking the time and the effort. Welcome to Risk Unfiltered. And so, for the folks who will be listening to this podcast, why don't you introduce yourself again and exactly what is TTT Limited and what comprises TTT Limited?
Okay, so thank you very much, Ken, and hello to your viewers and listeners here on Risk Unfiltered. My name is David Roberts, Management Professional and Chief Executive Officer of TTT Limited here in Trinidad and Tobago. And TTT Limited is the state broadcaster in Trinidad and Tobago, wholly owned by the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Company provides broadcast, production, and transmission services for audiences within Trinidad and Tobago as well as beyond, so throughout the region and of course the diaspora. And TTT Limited's broadcast services include our flagship free-to-air station, which is TTT, the brand, also 3 radio stations, Talk City 91.1, which is of course the talk format, our urban station or youth station, which is Next 99.1, and our adult contemporary station, which is Suite 100. We also operate a website and, of course, social media platforms for each of our brands.
In identifying those institutions, it seems as though you're touching all of the generations, the millennials, Gen Zs, the older crowd. To his benefit, David is currently engaged in the professional certificate in enterprise risk management at the Arthur Lockjack Global School of Business, and I always give kudos to CEOs and senior decision makers for taking the time and effort, because I'm sure David is a very busy person, to go and then learn more about risk management. So David, let's start off and let me put you on the spot. What do you do at your organizations with enterprise risk management?
Let me begin by saying, as CEO, I am just absolutely not looking for more things to do or things that take me away from my role here at TTT Limited. However, with that being said, I saw the importance of the significance of pursuing the professional certificate in enterprise risk management, because I recognize that for us to ensure the sustainability of TTT Limited, we had to begin to look at risk differently. For the most part, the standard, not just at TTT Limited, but across state enterprises in Trinidad and Tobago, will be from the perspective of internal audit, so the internal audit function.
Right.
But a lot of times the internal audit, the processes tend to be reactive because you're not looking at what went wrong. So I felt as though, especially based on the competitive nature of the markets that we operate in, we had it to be a bit more forward-facing in terms of our assessment of risk and our assessment of our processes. For me, the major thing, or the single most important thing for us to do, will be an effective enterprise risk register, so that we have a clear understanding of where exposure lies, looking at the likelihood of something taking place, and then mitigating those risks, because the company is in a challenging time because of the markets in which we operate. We have significant reductions in advertising spend, which is the primary way that we earn revenue outside of the subvention. We are also on a mission to reduce our dependence on the government subventions, recognizing, one, that we have the ability to generate more revenue, and secondly, understanding that government revenues, because of the pandemic, now have new priorities. Right. So when you look at the government's priorities, preserving life and limb, they are going to focus on spending on health-related items. So the single most important thing for me at this point will be the development of a comprehensive risk register, and then the associated actions that go with that.
Well, and you know, you're speaking This is like, ecstasy for a risk practitioner. Hearing a CEO says that, okay, we are going to go back and do these things. As enterprise risk management teaches us, let's connect the dots. Yeah. And then we'll come back to entertainment, which is the core of your business model, for the most part. Yeah, be it television. Okay. Given what you have read, seen, heard about what has happened with the Water and Sewage Authority, this is such an indictment on the management and the board of WASA, past, obviously, that it ought not to ever be, no other institution should ever be found wanting as this one has. Yeah. So what lessons learned from that experience are you now bringing to bear on how you run your ship, if any? Well, lessons learned is lessons learned. But were there any teaching moments given what you have found out, read about what has happened with another state enterprise?
Major takeaway for me, and I've shared it with my management team, is that you really want to be in control of your destiny. So you want to try to be as proactive as possible. And that would have started with my current board of directors, in that in January 2020, they would have been appointed. And sometime soon after, recognizing the state of the company, set in motion a plan to develop a stabilization plan, and not a strategic plan, which is a statutory requirement, which is why I commend them for recognizing that there were some serious challenges at the organization and there was the need for stabilization before the process of developing a strategic plan. So I've been telling the management team, you really want your turnaround effort or your transformation effort to be led by persons as close to the process as possible, because the situation with the Water and Sewage Authority, the actions being taken now are really coming out of a cabinet subcommittee. So the instruction, the guidance, the actions are coming from a totally different place and a totally different space. And I do appreciate that the impact of WASA on the economy versus the impact of TTT on the economy is very different, chalk and cheese.
Yes.
So the type of money that would have been spent at WASA is so significant that it really is a government concern, similar to that of Petrotrin, where
Yeah.
these investments or these subventions or these allocations are very significant and represent a high portion of the government expenditure by way of allocation. So corrective action has to take place sooner rather than later. But because these actions are now being directed from outside of the organization, they have less control. They have less control over the pace. They have less control over the direction. So I continue to urge my team, encourage my team to ensure that we begin to move, so that even if the government, and they're well within their right, begin to take a look at TTT, they can see that, okay, TTT is making some of the moves that we would have made or we would have recommended, and they're already moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
So if for example, WASA had taken steps to reduce expenditure, to improve infrastructure, one can
Effective risk management.
right, effective risk management, and one can say from the outside looking in that they may not have had the resources and it was not easy to do, but now the government is giving the commitment that it is going to be done.
Right.
So it is a matter of you really trying to control your destiny, taking ownership for your destiny, as opposed to being acted upon when it is definitely too late.
So and again, the conversation here obviously is not about the Water and Sewage Authority, but they are a state enterprise like the entity you now head. Do CEOs, and this is probably a rhetorical question because I believe I know the answer, do CEOs of state entities have quarterly meetings just to share experiences and pain points?
So you should say that, Ken. I am not aware of that in a formal setting. However, I have been reaching out to CEOs that I've worked with in the past, and also current CEOs of state agencies. So maybe the outcome of this series of meetings may be a formal network, but there have been conversations to ensure that we don't make the same mistakes, that I'm able to
Yeah,
learn from what
and
Ken has done, and Ken is able to learn from what I have done,
yeah,
and and vice versa, because we're all operating in the same space, we're all drawing from the same purse. We, at least at a minimum, we ought to be rowing in the same direction.
and
So
you know, yeah, and for some, and this is me putting on my risk practitioner hat, that because of cognitive biases, that may not be as productive and as formal as it needs to be. But that's a conversation for another day. And I'm speaking from professional experience with some of these state entities, or even some of the leaders in state entities. And so, as you now know, um, the most the greatest risk to any institution is like you, the people, the leaders, the decision makers, because risk management is meant to be, to what you were saying earlier, more proactive and anticipatory, not reactive. And to your internal audit folks, yes, we need those, but they are they are more detective, more reactive, as good as they are, and we need them. But there are too many state enterprises that are absent of formal functional risk management processes. So let's bring entertainment into the mix. What can you now do? What? So let's talk entertainment risk management. Have you have you gained any insights that will allow you to do to manage your entertainment platforms a little bit differently from a risk management perspective? So I want to tie the both together.
so let me come away from the platforms themselves, because the platforms form part of the business.
Right.
The real takeaway for me from the program so far,
Mhm.
it was that gem that doing a risk assessment on TTT Limited is not enough. That is
Brilliant.
not enough. I now have to take a look at the revenue structure of my business,
Mhm.
and also now look at the risks that may exist to my significant customers, right? And while it is so simple, it is not anything that I've ever heard or experienced or had anyone mention before, right? But you can see the logic in it.
Yeah.
But you now realize that you can't just do a risk assessment on your organization. You also have to do a risk assessment on those you depend on.
Brilliant.
Um,
Yes. Yeah.
right? So it's really consistent with what we've been doing as a company, because yes, we get the subvention from government, but we've also been looking to the private sector in particular to generate interest there, so that we diversify our sources of income, so that if there's any disruption one way or the other from the subvention from the government, that our operations aren't totally disrupted. But I never went as far as to consider
Yeah.
loosely. I would talk about it. So I mean, a significant customer for us is NLCB, who does lottery in Trinidad and Tobago. They're the National Lotteries Control Board. And so we know that during difficult financial times, gambling is one of the things that would increase in terms of probability. And they,
Mhm.
so ever so often, informally, I would be speaking to our people there, and and asking them how is business doing.
Right.
But what I really am asking is, how is my business doing? Because
Yeah.
your business is my business.
Right.
So to hear it, to hear it stated, really sent off a light bulb for me that I have been sharing with my team. And I was telling you that yesterday, that that is the single most important thing that really stands out for me, that the risk assessment doesn't stop with
Right.
your organization. And it comes back to the conversation we were having about checking a box as well. Then I do an enterprise risk assessment, and then I say, and we put that in a file. We don't act on it. We don't
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
whether or not things are changing in the environment. We don't look at whether or not the risk profile of our partners are changing, and how drastically that may be changing. And then, I say, it was a waste of time and it was a waste of money, but really and truly, I just did not put in the work
Right.
that that was required
Mm.
based on the information that I got.
Brilliant. So how do you then, and let's use some risk terminologies, how do you ring fence your organization while simultaneously future-proofing it? So by that I mean, so risk management is all about creating value and protecting assets, right? And the assets are physical, people, structural. So we are coming out, hopefully out of COVID. Earlier on, you said that you and your board did a stabilization plan, right? Good concept. I could equate that to what I will call risk triaging. So a couple of times I would go into an organization, and what we find is so critical. It's hemorrhaging. And so we have to actually pull the management and the board together and say, hey, this needs immediate attention, right? Before anything else continues, right? So that stabilization conversation you guys had, and kudos to you and your team for doing that. It's like a risk triaging thingy. You want to stop the blood from flowing. Okay. If that has been completed, have you started on or completed your strategic plan for the organization?
We have not started work on the plan.
Okay. All right. But you plan on doing so immediately. Anyone who had a 3 or 4 year strategic plan starting before 2020 needs to throw it out or totally revisit it. Because if the COVID experience has not taught you anything, those dependencies you had, those fellow institutions, supply chain, or people that you believe that can perform or provide over the next 3 or 4 years, or however long your strategic plan was supposed to be, is no longer there or will not operate in the way you think they would have operated, given what COVID has done. So COVID needs to become, as risk management is a sort of like denominator for future planning of your organization, because you now have to ask yourself, well, what if? And so risk being, as defined by ISO, the effect of uncertainty. Any institution's strategic plan ought not to be a wish list. We want to grow 10% or no, it needs to be a bit more detailed than that, taking into consideration all that has gone wrong this past 12 months. Yeah. And not enough conversation is being had, in my respectful view, around that. So where do you see, how do you plan on taking TTT and its ancillary institutions, and to use one of your lines from one of your radio stations, to the next level? Because you have some significant competitors there.
I'm not prepared to share the secrets.
That's fine.
But really and truly, it is, and almost every meeting I refer to it. We just need to clarify our position in the market and be true to those unique selling positions. Now, as the state broadcaster, we also have a real responsibility to inform and to educate. And we've been doing a significant job since the onset of COVID-19 with the virtual press conferences, which we pioneered. So right. TTT actually pioneered the virtual press conference in Trinidad and Tobago, and that came out of the COVID-19 restrictions where X number of persons could not be in a room together. And that was done before I joined the company. So that was done in March last year. And we are still, from the information that we have from surveys that we've done, the major source of government content, government information, particularly at this time, tied to COVID-19 information, because that is the topic of the day. So similarly, in that way that people are coming to us for that, we are also closely looking at what else people come to us for, and we're looking to do more of that, right? Of course, I'm not going to say what we're seeing, okay. So but we're going to be doing more of that. Because when you talk about ring fencing, you want to develop in your business to do those things that you're extremely good at, so that it is not easy for others to compete in that space effectively with you. And I've held for some time now a particular view for state agencies, in that they should operate like businesses, in that they should only operate in their areas of core competence.
Right.
So not necessarily railroading or bulldozing, but really what is the company good at? You know, and since I got here in June last year, June of 2020, I've been asking that, you know, what are we good at? And we've been testing, you know, so for me, I've been testing, right? And we have some answers, we have some preliminary answers, and we are going to be building out around our core competencies so that even when others are trying, they're not going to easily be able to
Okay, so let me piggyback. Let me piggyback, and this is going to get to the core of entertainment in Trinidad and Tobago, and I dare say the Caribbean. So you mentioned earlier that TTT has an historic presence and you know, some lineage, right? So and that could be a disadvantage because so I'm going to give you a little context and then I'll frame the question. As a TV or radio, you have to cater to a certain audience. You need to capture a certain type of audience. So in giving out, in sharing with us the radio stations, the Sweet 100, the urban youth, so you're catering for a certain demographic, right? That's a radio station. How would you then do that with TTT? Because in my respectful view, no, experience in and of itself can be a risk. So you ought not to, and I don't think you are relying on the much older residents, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago who remember the TTT of old to then just to be the only viewers, obviously. So what type of, without giving out any state secrets, so then you have to be constantly reviewing, revisiting your programming to ensure you bring folks from the other competitors or folks, the millennials, the Gen Zs, the Gen As that are coming up to come to your, so how do you, what do you have in place to determine, speaking about future proofing, or to say, okay, these are the type of programming we need to have out there to attract these new crowds? What is in play to do that?
As of now, for me, it's been testing. So we did test with a program called POP. It's hosted by Penny Gomez that has been responding well. And during Carnival, we did quite a lot in terms of testing with different partners, different models of getting content. But you're right, Ken, in terms of it is a lot easier on radio to be specific. On television, it tends to be a one size fits all. What we do though is kind of segment. So based on various times, we expect that particular people will be viewing and based on our information. So the programming is set based on time of day and the expected demographic. Another thing that we've been doing is the content targeted to the younger audience, even though it may be TTT branded. Sometimes what we do is we show it one time on television, but we show it at a different time on social media, recognizing that people are now consuming content differently. We set it at a time where we see the most traction on social media. So we don't necessarily always simultaneously show something on television and social media, but each channel gets its focus in that. What is the best time for it to be here and what is the best time for it to be
Okay,
here?
so you offer programming, you offer programs on your social media platforms, not just through the TTT brand. Is that not just on the television?
Right, yes. So it's
okay.
TTT branded, but it is on the TTT Live online, or it may be on Facebook, or it may be on YouTube.
Okay, so let me push. I recently, about 3 weeks ago, and I was having this conversation, well, a podcast with Private Ryan. And we were talking about the same conversation we are having, reaching different demographics. So as the population or the constituents become more diverse, age groups need to be branded and treated a bit differently. I said to him, well, you know what? I was doing some research and a fellow lecturer is putting his stuff on Twitch. And I knew nothing about that until I was doing some research, listening. I said, and then I asked Ryan, I said, are you on Twitch? He said, yeah, all of my stuff is moving to Twitch. And Twitch was a gaming and I'm suggesting this thing, this Twitch, and using this as an analogy to future proofing. So you cannot, and to your point, where you rightly, and I'm kudos to the folks who taught you this, who planted this thing about looking at the risks to your dependencies to impact upon you. What else is happening in the outside world that we aren't doing that we could piggyback? Remember these words, horizon scanning? Yeah. So now we are, a colleague who's not on, he's supposed to be on here, is actually guiding me, because I tend to defer to the subject matter experts. So now we'll be using Twitch to load some of these things on, because that caters to a certain demographic. You used the word diaspora earlier on, and obviously that's the Trinidad folks outside of Trinidad and Tobago. Do you have data that says or supports or demonstrates to you the volume of viewers you have outside of Trinidad and Tobago? Are you capturing that? You do?
Yes, via social media analytics.
Okay.
And yeah, so
Okay.
social media platforms as well as the streaming platform. So,
okay, so it's TTT, and this is for my edification. Is that the actual, not on the social media side, but on television? Is that can that be viewed up the islands?
yes, it is. I actually got a call, mainly the news though, through a partnership with our partners in the region. And I actually got a picture from a friend who's in St. Croix. And she told me that it's so refreshing to be able to look at Trinidad and Tobago news out there. Our mission is very different to those that are in the market now.
Than your competitors?
And well, I don't want to consider them competitors. Yeah, and I say that only because we are state funded. I am very mindful of that, and some may see it as an unfair advantage. But our mission is really, at least as I see it, to take Trinbagonian culture to the world, right? And because we're talking about the world, I've also been telling my team that we have to also look beyond Trinidad and Tobago, and we have to look at the Caribbean, because once we get on that world stage, a lot of times we're just too small a population to make the type of impact that we want to make. And it's not that we're afraid to go alone, but there are a lot of similarities right here in the Caribbean. So there have been conversations, and we have been in conversations directly and indirectly through other partners with how do we support the movement to take Trinbagonian culture to the world. And that is our films, that is our food, that is our designs, that is our music, in terms of how do we support.
And in your programs.
Yeah. So
all of those things could be programming content. But so is TTT restricted by what they can do based on the fact that you're a state enterprise in the entertainment space? And let's be clear. So can you get into the same sort of programming and markets as a CNC3 or a TV6?
Yes, there's no
restrictions.
The only restriction will be our imagination. As I said, our motive though, or what will drive, because I really see TTT as a social enterprise. So we're operating a business, but we're really primarily about the social good, right? I've always told my team that if we were to post a profit of 100 million, the government will be excited, my board will be elated, but TTT was not designed to make $100 million.
But can those two then come into conflict though, David?
Yes, most definitely.
But then how you traverse that thing though? Because you are there to because you said earlier that notwithstanding the subvention, you have to turn a profit, right? And so in my head, you need to run that as though it is a private institution. Those two, that's almost like an A-class dichotomy of sorts, social, but still. So how do you traverse that? How?
Yes. So we never lose sight of the social impact. We never lose sight of the social impact. And the thing about not losing sight of the social impact of our business is that when faced with a decision that can either be lucrative but have a negative impact on our communities, we choose the way, or we stand on the side of our communities. So during Carnival 2021, which was very different for all of us, we would have ensured that we created a platform for creators to have their content aired. And that was deliberate. We sat down and we said, as the state broadcaster, what is the role that we have to play in what is a very different carnival for most of these artists operating in this creative space? And when we looked at what was possible, as I said, it wasn't a one size fits all. It was, okay, we can do this for this one, we can do this for this art form, but our mindset was always on how do we preserve the memory of Carnival. Is the reason why we did the Carnival calendar, because that's one of the things that people look forward to for every Carnival. So we did the Carnival calendar around the content.
You still do a Carnival, physical, actual calendar to put on the wall kind of thingy?
No. We did a virtual calendar that I can send to you, but it really outlined all of the content that we had on air.
See that, yeah.
Right, and we really had a jam-packed program for Carnival 2021, and we really owned Carnival 2021, and that wasn't born out of us saying let's go and our target for Carnival 2021 is 10 million. Our target there was how do we create a platform for the widest possible level of participation without putting ourselves deeper in the hole. So it's not that we ever lose sight of the financial reality, but we always put that social mandate first. As the state broadcaster, we have a responsibility. It's the reason why we work with TUCO for Calypso History Month. It's the reason why we worked with them for Carnival. We worked with NCC.
Right, but David, you know, in saying that, you and maybe that's the reality of the organization TTT, the television station, because. And correct me if I'm wrong. So you will therefore always be, I wouldn't say restricted, but limited by the audience reach that you will have, given that because you have to do some of these social things, right? And let's be very real. The millennials, the 18 to 22s, they don't want to hear about and see about the tucos and stuff. They want the product to hear and see that product. So you do have some limitation by way of competing with the other folks. You have some restrictions there.
I see it another way. I see it as an opportunity to repackage the content to make it relevant to the different audiences. So if I take a very simple example of the Ministry of Health press conferences, for example. We carry it live on TTT. So we carry it live on television. We may also carry it live on Talk City 91.1 because we do a lot of simulcasting with television.
Right.
The opportunity comes in where we need to find a way to make the information that the Minister of Health has shared relevant to the urban market, because they need to know as well.
Granted,
they need to know number of cases. They need to know if there are spikes in a particular community. They need to know. And similarly, how do we make that relevant for the adult contemporary station? So it may mean that that same bit of content that we carry live on TTT, we simulcast 91.1 and we carry it live there. We carry capsules on 99.1, which is next, saying here's what there are 135 active cases in Shogunas, in Toko.
Right. Well, why don't you carry it? So let me make this point, but you do not carry those things live on Next, on 99.1. No. So that's the point I'm making. So I didn't bring the radio stations in. I was focusing on the TV station, right?
Right.
Because, and one of the things, and you know this, that data is king. My daughter once said to me, I was preparing something, and she says, "Hey, Dad, you know, I can always go back and listen to something. You know, I don't need to see it live all the time." And what might be important to me will be or should be important to a 22-year-old, but at different points in time.
Of course.
At different points in time, yeah? So in your TV programming, I could see, because you're doing it on the radio beautifully, because you're not going to stream your Minister of Health on 99.1. I wouldn't do it either, right? But you do put it in a package during news time or something. So you're managing that risks of potentially losing an audience given the targeted audience for 99.1. So you're doing that well. Okay. The question to you is, how do you then do that, if you can, with TTT? Is it possible? Or is it that you're so entrenched, ingrained, interconnected to a subset of your audience, i.e. the baby boomers, the folks who still home sitting down waiting for a live interview? Yeah, you want to do that, but how do you then ensure that you could pull future audiences? Because that their time will pass, so you need that constant refill. So that may be a difficult challenge, and
Right.
maybe you have an idea for that.
So one of the things we do is that we have a responsibility that other players in the market don't,
Right.
and we start there.
Yeah.
And I tell the management team that we have to do what we have to before we can do what we want to.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the reality.
Yeah, I'm not disillusioned by that. I'm not fazed by that. There is an opportunity, in my opinion, to still get creative with that.
Yes.
And ensure that it is impactful. So recently we did a 30-minute feature on the THA Act. As you know, right now, the Tobago House of Assembly is in 6-6 deadlock, which is historic. And from the national discourse, you realize people just don't understand the act. People just don't understand the act. And there are 3 players in the market. And I'm not sure if I missed it, but I didn't see anyone else who took the time to explain the act. And we trekked up to the University of the West Indies, with whom we have a good working relationship. And we had a discussion with Professor Hamid Ghani, because we recognize that here's what, based on what we were hearing, people just don't understand the act. So there is now the need to explain the act. Now, again, we're not going to put that cut and paste on Next. What we may post may be to social media on Next, the excerpts, the areas of the act that are important or critical to what is happening now. But as I said, that responsibility to inform and educate, we never shirk that responsibility. What we are trying to do now is ensure that the information is timely, the information is relevant, and it's packaged in a way that is appealing, that begins to get you incrementally to this broader market. Not cut and paste saying, okay, well, these baby boomers are going to pass away soon, and I need to get these younger people. So we go from this and I go to somebody.
No, it can be transition. So one of the fastest growing business environments in the Caribbean, and I guess in Trinidad and Tobago, is small and medium enterprises, entrepreneurs, right? So whether it's a coconut vendor, doubles vendor, someone with a hair salon. So that is an audience, both by way of content, and depending on how that content is built and delivered, you can gain audiences. So I'm speaking to the social aspect of what TTT does. Do you now have anything in place? Have you guys cut out a space or contemplating doing so then that folks could come now and I'm not just talking about an interview, and demonstrate what they're doing and the value that it can add both to their enterprise, their entrepreneur thinking, and to your audience? Is anything like that being contemplated?
I'm smiling because just as recently as today that this particular issue came up, we've been in conversation with NEDCO, which is the National Entrepreneurship Development Company.
Okay.
And we have also been in conversation with the Exim Bank in terms of how do we, as the state broadcaster, provide a space for their clients and clients who may fall out of that area to highlight their products in the same way that you're talking about, and the issue came up, and more than an interview. And if you have a conversation with me, a deeper, broader conversation with me, I'm always about what is the impact of what we do. So it's not to check a box to say we've interviewed 5 entrepreneurs, or for Global Entrepreneurship Week we've highlighted thing. My thing is, so if you I'll give you an example. I'll give you a real example. we came across someone, a citizen who is a nurse, but during the pandemic, she has now gone to her creative side and she's doing portraits, right? She did a portrait of our line minister, the Honorable Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Minister of Communications, Simon Dinobricker. And we presented that to him. The story was carried on TTT. And I saw the cameraman who did that story and I said, hey, what has the feedback been like regarding that story? And he said to me, it's been good. She has been getting continuous requests to do portraits. And that's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear that we got 5,000 likes. You know, that's one metric, and that's a metric for me to report to the board. But the real metric for me is she has appeared on TTT. She was getting 2 calls a week before. Has that moved to 10? Has that moved to 20? Because that now becomes a part of my conversation and a part of our value proposition.
Yeah.
To say, here's what. We had a conversation with Ken, and Ken was getting 20 calls before. And after the interview with us, that doubled to 40 calls. That puts you in a totally different space and allows you to have a totally different conversation with a potential partner.
Yeah. And I'm glad to hear that because I know of some entrepreneurs whose personality is suited for a larger audience, right? So you not only have to, in this dispensation called COVID and beyond, sell a product, you absolutely need to sell yourself with that, right? And as you know, management of risk starts with you, the individual. Yeah. Okay. So before we wrap up with David, we have some folks who are actually part of our team that we have an opportunity to do a little Q&A with our guests. So if anyone has a question for David, feel free to jump in. Just introduce yourself briefly and go ahead with the question.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I'm Richard Sinclair with the Academy. And I was wondering, is there any particular trend that you have been monitoring in the international entertainment space that you think could be used within TTT to strengthen your competitive advantage? There are different territories, different countries that are remodeling what entertainment is. So, you know, you've seen concerts and they've almost had different bubbles within the same space to still have the same illusion of cohesiveness, but still maintain that social distances. So I was wondering if in the television space he was monitoring any particular trends within entertainment that could be leveraged locally to grow his business.
There's a particular international model that I have been looking at for news. I am very intrigued by and very interested in rolling out.
But David, let me put a different spin on that, staying with the same rationale. So, and we all love to emulate and compare. Where I am now, if I'm watching a new program, and then I click the channel to watch, no disrespect, not casting any aspersion, but to watch a local news, 7 p.m. news, it's not as catchy. It's not as, it doesn't draw your attention. I'm not talking about the content just yet, because you get to that after you see the optics, the aesthetics. Yeah. So because that's all about attracting viewership. Why aren't we there yet? I mean, and not just TTT. I mean, speak for the industry. Why? And maybe some are doing it better than others, but why is it not as eye-catching, eye-popping as the ones? And maybe it's the numbers, the cost or whatever. But why?
Cost can. If you look at it, companies are still able to post profits. You know, with the current.
Yeah, and I will forever disagree with that. But you're right. You're right.
No, and I agree with you. You know, why should there be a difference between, you know, as you flick cable stations? Why should there be a difference? And that's part of it. In terms of person saying something is too expensive, I've been trying to work with the team now just to recalibrate our thinking to say that, yes, well, if we spend $1 and we make $1.50, it's $1 well spent. If we spend $1 and we make $1 back, but we are able to expand our market share and expose our brands to new markets, then it's $1 well spent. I think in the market now, persons are able to do what they're doing now and still get a return on their investment.
Yeah.
So in terms of any further investment, it may be viewed as unnecessary, as it were, right? I mean, before we had competition in the telecommunications space, there were severe limitations there. And I remember the days of $6 a phone call and $3 after 6, because I'll tell people to, I'll call you back after 6 or call me back after 6. So based on where this space is, that is why we see that. And once someone makes a move in the market, it happens in banking all the time. We go abroad and we see so many things available in banking, and we've come a long way locally. But you see here, once one starts with the chip technology, then they kind of all fall in line with the chip technology and begin to move in a particular direction. So we'll see. I mean, I'm telling you, I'll hold you as the highest rated critic. So when we do,
but it is
you let me know.
it's moving along a certain continuum. Yeah, and it's catering to maybe audience that aren't quite there yet, but you don't want to wait till they get there, because by the time they wait to get, you would lose them. That's my thinking. Any line of that's being proactive and anticipatory, and it's not always.
I'll say this to you as well. So since I've come on board, we've been having some conversations, as I assume the company has had in the past, but we've been having some conversations with international sources to provide our content. And immediately, just the requirements, your content has to be of a particular standard to even be considered. We're not talking about approval yet. We're talking about to be considered. So even in the push to expand beyond, there is that need for capacity building and an improvement in your ability to deliver at a particular level consistently. To begin that conversation.
That's the operative word, consistently.
You can't do it once and then fall down. But it was interesting, because then I came back to the team and I said, hey, we're having this conversation, but if we are to move in this direction, these are the requirements that they are outlining. So it was back to the drawing board for us in terms of what was required.
And I believe institutions, processes must evolve. And so when we talk about normalization of deviance, that's people and processes, almost like stagnation, because nothing is going to change, so we wouldn't change. And that's a difficult sell for me. Okay, so David, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. So on the call with us was David Roberts, CEO of TTT Limited. David, thank you much. Go forth and multiply the information. And again, I want to end by saying it's comforting to have someone of your risk intelligence at the helm of a state enterprise. So thank you again.
Sure, take it easy.
Okay.
Thanks a lot and have a good evening.
Okay, cheers, bye.